Hey everyone, welcome to True Horror Stories Film. I had been grateful if you'd settle in and watch this video before you get too cozy. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I am really hoping we can reach 1,000 subscribers very soon. Your support fuels my continued efforts. I bring the best horror stories to this channel. I handpick each one, so I promise you'll find another great one right after this. Don't miss out, watch them all. The turnout, based on a true story. Have you ever wondered what happens to the souls of those who disappear without a trace? What if I told you that some ghosts don't haunt houses? They haunt highways, feeding on the broken and desperate who travel America's forgotten roads. What if the very people meant to protect the innocent become the monsters in the shadows? This is my story. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I used to be a long-haul trucker. I thought I knew every dark corner of the interstate system. Every truck stops where lost souls gathered like moths to a flame. I was wrong. Some places exist in the spaces between reality and nightmare, and some people aren't people at all. What I'm about to tell you will make you question every friendly face you meet on the road, every helping hand extended in your darkest hour. Because sometimes the person offering salvation is actually your executioner. The CB radio crackled to life at 2:47 a.m. on Interstate 80, somewhere between the Nebraska cornfields and my next delivery in Colorado. I'd been driving for 18 hours straight, my eyes burning from the endless stretch of asphalt illuminated by my headlights. The coffee had stopped working hours ago, but I couldn't afford to stop. Not with the payments due on my rig. Not with my ex-wife threatening to take my daughter Emma away permanently. Breaker one night, this is Highway Angel looking for any good buddies out there. Got a situation that needs some Christian charity. The voice was smooth as honey, with just enough vulnerability to make you want to help. Female, probably mid-30s, with a slight southern accent that made every word sound like a prayer. In 18 years of trucking, I'd heard thousands of voices on the CB, but this one was different. It seemed to reach right through the radio and wrap around your heart. Highway Angel, this is Big Bear. What's your 20 and what kind of help do you need? I shouldn't have answered. I should have kept driving, focused on my own problems. But there was something in her voice that reminded me of Emma when she was little, when she'd woken up from nightmares and needed her daddy to chase away the monsters. Big Bear, you're a godsend. I am mile marker 237, broken down on the shoulder. My little sister's with me and she's sick, really sick. We just need someone to call for help, maybe give us a ride to the nearest hospital. Mile marker 237. I knew that stretch of highway, desolate, no cell service, the kind of place where people disappeared and nobody asked questions. The smart thing would be to radio the state police, let them handle it. But something in her voice made me press the accelerator instead of the radio button. I'm about 10 miles out, Highway Angel. Hang tight, I'll be there soon. Bless you, Big Bear. We'll be looking for your lights. I should have noticed that she never gave me her real name. Should have wondered why someone with a sick child would be out on that empty stretch of road in the middle of the night. But I was thinking about Emma, about how I'd want someone to help her if she was stranded and scared. 10 miles later, I saw them. A woman standing beside a broken-down sedan, waving frantically at my headlights. Even in the darkness, I could see she was beautiful. Long blonde hair, curves in all the right places, the kind of woman who could make a lonely trucker forget about his troubles. Next to her, slumped against the car, was what looked like a teenage girl. I pulled over and climbed down from my cab, my joints creaking after the long haul. The woman rushed toward me, tears streaming down her face. "Thank God you stopped," she sobbed, throwing her arms around me. "I'm Sarah. And this is my sister Lily. She's been getting worse all night. I think it might be her appendix. Up close, Sarah was even more stunning than I'd thought. But there was something wrong with the picture. The broken-down car looked too clean, too staged. And the girl, Lily, wasn't moving at all. Not the restless shifting of someone in pain, but the absolute stillness of, "Is she breathing?" I asked, moving toward the motionless figure. "Barely," Sarah said, grabbing my arm. "Please, we need to take her to a hospital. Can you give us a ride?" "My phone's dead, and yours probably doesn't work out here either." She was right about the phone. No signal for miles. But something about the whole situation felt wrong. Like a movie set where the details didn't quite match. The girl's clothes were too clean, her position too perfect, and Sarah's tears seemed genuine, but her eyes remained cold, calculating. "Of course I'll help," I heard myself saying. "Let's get her into my cab." That was my second mistake. Sarah rode up front with me, while Lily lay stretched across the sleeper bunk behind us. Every few minutes, Sarah would check on her sister, making concerned noises and touching the girl's forehead. But I noticed she never actually looked worried. Her movements were too practiced, too rehearsed. "So, what were you two doing out here so late?" I asked, trying to make conversation and calm my growing unease. "Driving to Denver," Sarah said without hesitation. "Our aunt lives there. We were supposed to be there hours ago, but the car started making noise around Cheyenne." "Yeah." Her story was smooth, believable. But I'd been driving on these roads for nearly 2 decades, and something felt off. The way she knew exactly which exit to take for the hospital. The way she kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way her hand kept moving to her purse, as if checking for something. "You've been down this road before," I observed. "Once or twice," she said. "Business trips." "What kind of business?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I caught a glimpse of something cold and predatory in her eyes before the concerned sister act returned. "I'm in sales," she said. "Travel a lot." Behind us, Lily finally stirred. But instead of groaning in pain like someone with appendicitis, she made a different sound, a low whimper that sounded more like fear than illness. "Shh, honey," Sarah said, reaching back to stroke the girl's hair. "We're almost there." But when she turned around, I saw something that made my blood freeze. Sarah was smiling. Not the relieved smile of someone whose sick relative was getting help, but the satisfied smile of a predator who'd successfully lured prey into her trap. That's when I noticed the smell. Sweet and chemical, like the ether my grandfather used to use for cleaning engines. And Lily wasn't sick. She was drugged. "Stop the truck," Lily whispered, so quietly I almost missed it. "Please, stop the truck." Sarah's hand shot back, pressing something against the girl's face. A cloth, soaked in that sweet-smelling chemical. Lily's protests faded into unconsciousness. "What did you just do?" I demanded, reaching for my CB radio. Sarah's hand was faster. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength, and I felt something sharp prick my arm. A needle. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she said, and for the first time, her voice sounded genuinely sad. "You seemed like such a nice man." But nice men always have to play hero, don't they? Always have to stick their noses where they don't belong. The world started to blur around the edges. My foot slipped off the accelerator, and the truck began to slow. "How do you know my name?" I slurred. "I know lots of things about you, Marcus Thompson. I know about your ex-wife Kelly. I know about your daughter Emma. I know about the restraining order and the custody battle. I know how lonely you are, how desperate you are for someone to need you. The truck rolled to a stop on the shoulder. Sarah reached over and put it in park, then pulled the keys from the ignition. My vision was fading, but I could see other vehicles approaching. A van and another car, their headlights cutting through the darkness. I know because I have been watching you, Marcus. Tracking your routes, learning your weaknesses. You're not the first lonely trucker I've helped off this highway, and you won't be the last. As consciousness slipped away, I realized the horrible truth. There was no sick sister, no broken down car, no emergency. Sarah was something much worse than a stranded motorist. She was a hunter, and I'd driven myself right into her web. The last thing I saw before everything went black was Sarah's face, beautiful and terrible in the dashboard lights, smiling as men in dark clothes climbed into my cab. I woke up in hell. At least, that's what it looked like at first glance. A vast, dimly lit warehouse, filled with the sound of machinery and human suffering. I was chained to a metal chair in what appeared to be some kind of office overlooking the main floor. Through the grimy windows I could see dozens of people, mostly young women and girls working at tables, sorting through what looked like drugs or cash. But it was the other sounds that made my skin crawl. Crying, pleading, the sharp crack of someone being hit. The kind of sounds that told you about this place was where hope came to die. You're awake. Good. Sarah stood in the doorway, but she looked different now. The vulnerable, desperate woman from the highway was gone, replaced by someone cold and efficient. She wore dark clothes and carried herself like a person used to being obeyed without question. Where am I? I croaked, my throat dry as sandpaper. Processing center, she said matter-of-factly. We bring the merchandise here first, sort them out, figure out where they're going next. Some go to the farm, some to the clubs, some to private collectors. Merchandise? Girls mostly. Boys sometimes if they're young enough or pretty enough. There's always demand. The words hit me like physical blows. This wasn't just kidnapping. This was human trafficking on an industrial scale. And I delivered myself right to them. You're insane, I whispered. Sarah laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Insane, eh? No, Marcus. I'm practical. Do you know how many girls like Lily disappear every year? Thousands. Runaways, addicts, foster kids, nobody misses. They're lost already. I just give them purpose. She's not your sister. Of course not. Lily's one of our newer acquisitions. Picked her up at a truck stop in Wyoming last month. Her mother sold her to pay off a drug debt. Sarah moved to the window, looking down at the activity below. She's been very useful for operations like last night. Nothing pulls at a trucker's heartstrings like a sick kid. I tested my chains, but they were solid steel, welded to the chair, and bolted to the floor. How many people have you killed? Killed? Sarah turned back to me, genuinely surprised. Marcus, I don't kill people. I recycle them. The girls become workers until they're too old or too damaged. Then they become trainers for the new ones. The men. She gestured at me. The men become drivers. Recruiters. They help us find more merchandise. I'll never help you. You will. Her smile was confident, practiced. They all say that at first, but after a few months of conditioning, after we show you what happens to the girls who don't cooperate, after we make it clear that your daughter Emma might end up here if you don't play along, you'll be amazed how helpful you become. The mention of Emma sent ice through my veins. You leave her alone. That depends entirely on you, Marcus. Cooperate. And Emma stays safe in her little suburban school, worried about homework and boys. Refuse. She pulled out her phone, showing me a photo of Emma walking out of her school, backpack slung over her shoulder, completely unaware she was being watched. "You're a monster." I breathed. "I am efficient," Sarah corrected, "and I'm very, very good at what I do. Do you know how long I've been running this operation? 15 years, Marcus. 15 years of moving product up and down the interstate system, and law enforcement has never gotten close. You know why?" I didn't answer, but she continued anyway. "Because I don't just take the throwaway kids. I take the helpers too. Good Samaritans. The heroes. The people who stop to help stranded motorists. I turn them into my network. Truckers, mechanics, diner owners, all of them working for me now. All of them with families I can reach if they step out of line." She moved closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Your friend Jimmy? The one who helped you get clean last year? He's been working for me for 3 years now. Those random truck breakdowns that left you stranded at certain stops. Not so random. Jimmy was steering you to places where my people could evaluate you. See if you'd make a good addition to our family." The betrayal hit me like a sledgehammer. Jimmy, who'd been like a brother to me, who'd helped me through my divorce and addiction. He'd been working for these monsters all along. "Now," Sarah continued, "you have a choice. You can fight this, refuse to cooperate, and watch your daughter disappear into our system. Or you can accept your new reality and help us help more people like yourself. Lonely people, desperate people, people who just want to do the right thing." Before I could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the warehouse. Red lights flashed, and I could hear shouting from the floor below. Sarah's confident expression cracked for the first time. "What the hell?" she muttered, pulling out a radio. "Control, what's the situation?" "We've got law enforcement surrounding the building." A panicked voice crackled through the speaker. "FBI, State Police, DI, the whole alphabet soup. Somebody talk." Sarah's face went white with rage. She spun toward me, her hand moving to a gun at her waist. "Did you?" "I've been chained to this chair since I woke up," I pointed out. "How could I have contacted anyone?" But even as I said it, I realized what had happened. The CB radio in my truck. I'd left it on, broadcasting everything. Somewhere out there another trucker heard Sarah's confession and called it in. The warehouse erupted in chaos as the trapped workers scattered and armed men took defensive positions. Through the office windows I could see law enforcement vehicles surrounding the building, their lights turning the night into a kaleidoscope of red and blue. "This isn't over," Sarah snarled, pointing her gun at me. "If I'm going down, you're coming with me." But before she could pull the trigger, the office door exploded inward. Federal agents in tactical gear flooded in, their weapons trained on Sarah. "Drop the gun. Drop it now." For a moment, Sarah hesitated. Then with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth, she pressed the barrel to her own temple. "See you in hell, Marcus," she said. The gunshot was deafeningly loud in the small space. 3 months later, I was still having nightmares. The FBI had been thorough in their investigation. Sarah's operation was even larger than I'd imagined. A network spanning 12 states, with dozens of accomplices and hundreds of victims. The warehouse I'd been held in was just one of many processing centers. But Sarah herself remained a mystery. The name she'd given me was fake, of course. No fingerprints in the system, no dental records, no DNA matches. It was as if she'd materialized out of thin air, built her criminal empire, and then vanished just as mysteriously. That might have been the end of it, if not for what I found in my truck. The FBI had returned my rig after processing it for evidence. I was doing my pre-trip inspection, checking for any damage from their investigation, when I found something that shouldn't have been there. Tucked behind the CB radio, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, was a small digital recorder. The device was sophisticated, military grade, capable of storing weeks of audio. But more disturbing was what it contained. Conversations I didn't remember having. Stops I'd made at truck stops and diners where I'd apparently talked to young women, convinced them to get in my truck, promised them jobs or help. According to the timestamps, these conversations have taken place over the past 6 months. But I had no memory of any of them. That's when I started to piece together the real horror of what had happened to me. The needle Sarah had used on me hadn't just been a sedative. It had been some kind of drug that affected memory formation. For months, maybe longer, I'd been driving routes I didn't remember, picking up victims I couldn't recall, delivering them to places that existed only in the gaps of my missing time. I wasn't just a victim of Sarah's operation. I was an unwitting accomplice. The realization sent me to a psychiatrist who confirmed my worst fears. The gaps in my memory, the lost time, the strange dreams I'd been having, all symptoms of chemically induced amnesia. Someone had been dosing me regularly, using me as an unwitting courier while keeping my conscious mind unaware. How many? I asked Dr. Patterson during one of our sessions. How many people did I help them take? There's no way to know for sure, she said gently. But based on the recorder and the investigation, possibly dozens. Dozens of people. Young women who'd trusted me, gotten into my truck thinking they were getting help, only to disappear into Sarah's network. And I couldn't remember any of their faces. That night, I sat in my apartment with my service pistol on the table in front of me. Emma was safe. The FBI had confirmed that. But how many other daughters, sisters, mothers had I unknowingly delivered to hell? The gun was cold and heavy in my hand. It would be easy. Quick. A way to finally pay for what I'd done, even if I hadn't done it willingly. But as I sat there in the darkness, I heard something that made me pause. My CB radio, which I'd brought up from the truck, crackled to life. Breaker 19, this is Highway Angel looking for any good buddies out there. Got a situation that needs some Christian charity. The voice was different, younger, with a Midwestern accent instead of Southern. But the words, the cadence, the subtle manipulation in every syllable, it was exactly the same as Sarah's script. Highway Angel, this is Road Dog. What's your 20? Another trucker, just like me, responding to what seemed like a cry for help. Another good Samaritan about driving into the same trap I had. I dropped the gun and grabbed my radio mic. Road Dog, this is Big Bear. Do not repeat. Do not approach that location. Highway Angel is a trap. Call the FBI immediately. Big Bear, you're breaking up. Say again. But it was too late. I could hear in Road Dog's voice that he was already committed, already playing the hero, just like I had. That's when I understood the final, horrible truth. Sarah hadn't been the head of the organization. She'd been just another cog in the machine. The network was still operating, still using the same methods, the same scripts, the same manipulation tactics. And somewhere out there, in the dark spaces between cities, along the highways that connect our lonely country, they were still hunting. I never drove a truck again. I couldn't trust myself, couldn't trust my own memories. Instead, I became something else. A watchman, monitoring CB channels, tracking the patterns, trying to warn other drivers about the traps being set for them. The FBI task force is still active, still investigating. They've shut down 3 more warehouses and arrested dozens of accomplices. But for every operation they close, 2 more seem to pop up. Because the truth is, America's highways are perfect hunting grounds. Millions of people travel through empty spaces, far from help, far from witnesses. Truckers who spend weeks alone on the road, desperate for human connection. Runaways and addicts gravitating toward truck stops like moths to flame. And in that darkness, predators like Sarah thrive. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear her voice on the radio. Different names, different accents, but always the same script. Always looking for good buddies who want to help. Always finding heroes willing to drive straight into hell. So listen carefully if you're out there on the road. If someone calls for help in the darkness, if they have a story that tugs at your heartstrings, if they promise that you're the answer to their prayers, remember my warning. Sometimes the person offering salvation is actually your executioner. Sometimes the highway angel is really a demon in disguise. And sometimes the road to hell isn't paved with good intentions. It's paved with concrete and marked with mile markers, stretching endlessly into the American night. Drive safely out there. Trust no one. And remember, on the highway, help isn't always what it seems. The CB radio crackles again. Another voice, another cry for help, another trap being set. But this time, I'm listening. This time, someone will be warned. Remember, dear listeners, evil rarely announces itself with fangs and claws. More often, it wears a beautiful face and speaks with a honey-sweet voice, preying on our deepest desire to help others. The universe has a way of ensuring that those who exploit compassion receive their own twisted justice in return. But by then, how many innocents have been lost along the way? Trust your instincts. Question helpful strangers. And remember, not everyone who seems to need saving is actually the victim. Sweet dreams, travelers. And watch out for highway angels.
The shark's shadow. Sometimes, the world we know cracks open, revealing something dark and impossible beneath. Have you ever stood on a familiar shore, watching waves roll in, only to feel the ground shift under your feet, as if the ocean itself is hiding a secret? What if the water you've swum in your whole life suddenly felt alive, watching you, waiting for you to step too close? A shadow moves beneath the surface, bigger than it should be, older than time itself. What would you do if you saw it, and it saw you back? Your subscriptions, likes, and notifications fuel our passion for unearthing these chilling tales. So, grab a blanket, dim the lights, and let's dive into the deep end. This story began when I was researching strange coastal encounters for a podcast, scouring obscure forums and local news archives. I stumbled across a brief article from Panama City Beach, Florida, dated July 31st, about a massive hammerhead shark spotted near the shore, devouring an eagle ray as stunned beachgoers watched. The story was short, clinical, but the comments section was alive with whispers. Locals swearing the shark wasn't just big, it was wrong, like it carried an ancient weight in its movements. One user, anonymous, claimed they'd seen it up close while working a night shift as a zookeeper at a nearby aquarium. Their words stuck with me. It wasn't just eating, it was claiming something. I couldn't shake the chill in my spine, the need to know more. I reached out, and after weeks of messages, they agreed to share their story. This is what they told me, in their own words, and I haven't slept the same since. My name is Emily Carter, and I never believed in curses or old legends until that summer at Gulf Coast Aquarium. I was 27, working the night shift as a zookeeper, cleaning tanks and monitoring the animals after hours. The aquarium was my sanctuary, quiet, predictable, the hum of filters and the glow of underwater lights soothing my anxiety. I'd always been a worrier, overthinking every creak in my apartment, every shadow that seemed to linger too long. But the aquarium felt safe, like a bubble where the outside world couldn't touch me. That changed on July 31st, when I saw something in the water that broke me open, exposing a fear I didn't know I could feel. The aquarium sat on the edge of Panama City Beach, its back wall a massive glass panel facing the Gulf of Mexico. During the day, tourists pressed their noses against it, watching fish dart through artificial coral. At night, it was just me and the tanks, the ocean beyond the black void. I'd been on edge all week, hearing about a huge hammerhead shark spotted near the shore. Beachgoers said it was eating an eagle ray, tearing it apart with a ferocity that felt personal. I brushed it off as exaggerated tourist chatter. Hammerheads were big? Sure, but they didn't come that close to shore. Still, the story gnawed at me, like a splinter I couldn't pull out. That night, I was cleaning the shark tank, a massive cylindrical enclosure in the aquarium's heart. It housed smaller sharks, blacktips, nurses, nothing like the monster in the news. The air was thick with the smell of salt and bleach. The overhead lights dimmed to mimic moonlight for the animals. I was scrubbing algae off the glass when I heard it. A low, rhythmic thrum, like a heartbeat pulsing through the water. My stomach twisted, a cold sweat prickling my skin. I told myself it was just the filtration system acting up, but my hands shook as I gripped the scrubber. I'd always had this irrational fear of deep water, a leftover from childhood nightmares about being pulled under by something I couldn't see. Now that fear was crawling up my throat, choking me. I stepped back from the tank, my breath shallow, and that's when I saw it, a shadow moving in the water beyond the glass wall, out in the open gulf. It was massive, far bigger than any hammerhead I'd studied in my marine biology classes. Its silhouette was wrong, too elongated, with a head that seemed to pulse, like it was breathing the ocean itself. My heart hammered, my mind screaming that it was just a trick of the light, but I couldn't look away. The shadow glided closer, and I swear it paused, its bulk filling the entire glass panel. I felt exposed, like it was studying me, peeling back my skin to see the fear inside. I stumbled backward, knocking over a bucket of cleaning supplies. The clatter echoed, but the shadow didn't flinch. Instead, it turned, revealing a glint of an eye. Huge, milky, and impossibly aware. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, clutching my chest. I was alone, but I didn't feel alone. The air felt heavy, like something was pressing down on me, whispering in a language I couldn't hear but could feel in my bones. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body wouldn't move. All I could do was stare as the shadow lingered, then slowly sank back into the black. I don't know how long I sat there, trembling, my mind racing with excuses. A trick of the light, a whale, anything but what I felt in my gut. That this thing wasn't just a shark. It was something older, something that didn't belong in our world. When I finally stood, my legs were jelly, and the aquarium felt different, like the walls themselves were watching me. I grabbed my phone and typed a frantic message to my coworker Jake, who worked days. "Did you see anything weird in the Gulf tonight?" I hit send, my fingers clumsy, but he didn't reply until morning. "Just tourists freaking out about that hammerhead. You okay?" I wasn't okay. That night, I barely slept, my dreams filled with that pulsing shadow, its eye locking onto mine. I kept replaying the moment, questioning my own sanity. I'd always struggled with anxiety, my mind turning small things into catastrophes, but this felt different. It wasn't just my head playing tricks, it was real, and it had seen me. The next night, I almost called in sick, but I needed the money, and a small, stupid part of me wanted to prove I wasn't losing it. So, I went back. The aquarium was quieter than usual. The air was thick with a damp chill that hadn't been there before. I avoided the shark tank, sticking to the smaller exhibits, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed to move. Every ripple in the water felt like a signal. Around 2 a.m., I was checking the jellyfish tank when I heard it again, that low, thrumming pulse. My heart stopped. It was coming from the shark tank. I told myself to ignore it, to finish my rounds and leave, but my feet moved on their own, drawn to the glass. The tank was empty, or it should have been. Our sharks were small, docile, but there, in the center, was that same massive shadow, its hammerhead shape unmistakable but wrong, its edges fraying like smoke. It wasn't one of our sharks. It couldn't be. The tank was sealed, the water filtered. There was no way for something that size to get in. Yet there it was, circling, its eye fixed on me. My breath hitched, tears stinging my eyes as I backed away, my mind screaming that this wasn't possible. I tripped over a hose, falling hard, and when I looked up, the shadow was gone. The tank was empty again, just our small sharks gliding lazily. I was shaking so badly I could barely stand. I called Jake, sobbing, begging him to come in early. He thought I was having a panic attack, told me to breathe, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. When he arrived, I showed him the tank, but there was nothing to see. He checked the security cameras, humoring me, but the footage was grainy, showing only me staring at the tank, then falling. "You're stressed," he said, his voice gentle but patronizing. "Maybe take a few days off." I wanted to scream that I wasn't crazy, that something was here, but the words stuck in my throat. The next few nights, I stayed home, popping anxiety meds and jumping at every sound. I scoured the internet for anything about that shark, finding only the news article about the beach sighting and a few cryptic forum posts. One user, calling themselves Deep Watcher, claimed the Gulf was home to something ancient, a predator that wasn't just a shark but a vessel for something else. They mentioned old sailors' stories, curses tied to the sea, things that fed on fear and blood. I laughed it off at first, internet nonsense, but the more I read, the more it felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. I went back to work a week later, telling myself I'd imagined it all. But the aquarium felt wrong now. The air was thick with a smell like rotting seaweed. My coworkers noticed my jumpiness, whispering behind my back. Even Jake, who'd always been a friend, started keeping his distance. I felt isolated, like the thing in the water had marked me, pushing everyone else away. My anxiety spiraled, my thoughts a tangle of doubt and dread. Was I losing my mind, or was something really out there, watching, waiting? Then came the first twist, the moment that shattered any hope I had of normalcy. I was locking up the aquarium, the building dark, except for the glow of the tanks. I avoided the shark tank, but as I passed the glass wall facing the Gulf, I saw it again. That shadow, closer than ever, its eye glowing like a lantern in the deep. But this time, it wasn't alone. Smaller shapes moved with it, their forms indistinct but human-like, trailing behind like ghosts. My knees buckled, my mind screaming that this was impossible, that I was hallucinating. But then I heard it, a whisper, clear as day from the water. "Emily!" My name. It knew my name. I ran, my sneakers slipping on the wet floor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I didn't stop until I was in my car, doors locked, sobbing into the steering wheel. I didn't go back to work after that. I couldn't. I quit the next day, ignoring Jake's calls, moving inland to a small apartment where the sound of the ocean couldn't reach me. But the fear followed. I started seeing shadows in mirrors, hearing that thrumming pulse in my dreams. My anxiety meds didn't help. They made it worse. like they were opening a door for whatever was out there. The second twist came months later when I thought I'd escaped. I was researching the shark, desperate for answers, when I found an old book in a used bookstore. Its pages yellowed and smelling of salt. It was a collection of coastal folklore, and one story stopped me cold. A tale about a creature called the Shadow of the Deep, a predator that wasn't just a shark, but a vessel for a curse. It fed on fear, latching onto those who saw it, drawing them back to the water. The book mentioned a ritual, a way to break the curse by offering something to the sea, a sacrifice. I laughed, a bitter, broken sound, because I didn't believe in curses. But that night, I dreamed of the shark again, its eye glowing. And when I woke, my feet were wet, like I'd been standing in the ocean. I don't know what's real anymore. I've started hearing the thrum everywhere, in the hum of my fridge, the rush of my shower. I see shadows moving in the corners of my eyes, always just out of reach. I'm terrified to sleep, terrified to leave my apartment, terrified that the next time I close my eyes I'll wake up in the water with that thing waiting for me. I keep the book hidden, afraid to read it again, afraid of what it means. Did I bring this to myself staring too long into the deep? Or was it always there, waiting for someone like me? Someone already broken? Already afraid? I'm telling you this because I need someone to know, someone to believe me. The aquarium is still open, the Gulf still calling. You're ever in Panama City Beach? Stay away from the water at night. Don't look too long at the shadows. They might look back. The universe doesn't forgive those who disturb its secrets. My curiosity, my refusal to look away, invited something into my life that I can't escape. The ending isn't clear. Am I cursed, or is my mind betraying me? The shadows still move. The thrum still calls. Maybe the real horror is never knowing.
Lighthouse Pulse. Sometimes the places we think are safe harbor the darkest secrets. Have you ever stood in a place meant to guide, to protect, only to feel it watching you back? What if a beacon built to save lives was calling something else entirely? Something that doesn't belong in our world? A light that pulses with a rhythm no human could make. A whisper that knows your name. What would you do if you realized the sanctuary you trusted was a trap? Your subscriptions, likes, and notifications keep these eerie tales alive. So, pull up a chair, dim the lights, and let's step into the fog. This story came to me while I was combing through news archives for a horror podcast, hunting for stories that felt too strange to be true. I found a brief report about a shooting at Fort Stewart, Georgia, where 5 soldiers were injured and an army sergeant was taken into custody. The base went on lockdown, but the article was dry, clinical, leaving out the whispers I found on obscure forums. Locals mentioned a nearby lighthouse, old and abandoned, where strange lights had been seen the night of the incident. One user, claiming to be a former lighthouse keeper, said they'd experienced something there years ago, something that followed them. I reached out, and after weeks of messages, they shared their story. This is their account, in their own words, and it's left me sleepless. My name is Daniel Harper, and I was 29 when I took the job as a lighthouse keeper at the old St. Mary's Lighthouse, just a few miles from Fort Stewart, Georgia. It was a lonely gig, perfect for someone like me who'd always wrestled with anxiety, overthinking every choice, every sound in the night. The lighthouse was decommissioned, a relic from the 1800s, but they kept a keeper on for maintenance, mostly to keep vandals out. I liked the solitude, the rhythmic crash of waves, the way the tower stood against the storms. It felt like a place where I could control my fears, keep the world at bay. That was before the pulse started, before I realized the light wasn't just a beaconite. It was a call. It was late July. The air was thick with salt and heat, When I first noticed something off, I was up in the lantern room, checking the old Fresnel lens, when the air grew heavy, like a storm was coming, but the sky was clear. My chest tightened, a familiar anxiety clawing at me, but this was different, sharper, like a warning. I'd always had this fear of being trapped, a holdover from childhood nightmares about being locked in tight spaces. Now, the lighthouse felt too small, the walls pressing in. I shook it off, blaming my overactive mind, but then I heard it. A low, throbbing pulse, like a heartbeat echoing through the stone. I froze, my hands gripping the railing, my breath shallow. The sound wasn't mechanical, not the generator or the wind. It came from the lens, a faint hum that seemed to vibrate in my bones. I checked the wiring, the bulb, everything. Nothing was on. The lighthouse hadn't been lit in decades. Yet, when I looked out at the sea, I saw a flicker, a pale green glow pulsing in the distance, not from the lens but from the water itself. My stomach twisted, my heart racing. I told myself it was bioluminescence, a trick of the tide, but the pulse felt alive, like it was watching me. I didn't sleep that night, my apartment at the base of the tower feeling too exposed, the windows too close to the sea. I kept hearing that pulse, faint but persistent, like it was burrowing into my head. My anxiety meds didn't help. They made the world fuzzy, like I was sinking into the sound. The next day I called my friend Mia, a park ranger who'd helped me get the job. "You ever hear anything weird out here?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She laughed, said old lighthouses were full of ghost stories, but her voice was tight, like she was hiding something. I didn't push, but I couldn't shake the feeling she knew more than she let on. The next night, I was back in the lantern room, my nerves frayed. The pulse was louder, faster, like it was exciting. I was checking the logbook, trying to distract myself, when the lens flickered. Not the bulb, but the glass itself, glowing that same sickly green. My hands shook, my mind screaming that this wasn't possible. I backed toward the door, but the air grew thick, heavy, like something was pressing down on me. Then I saw it, a shadow moving outside the glass, not on the walkway but in the air, humanoid but wrong, its edges blurring like smoke. Its head turned, and I swear it had no face, just a void where eyes should be. I stumbled down the spiral stairs, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The pulse followed, louder, vibrating through the walls, whispering my name, Daniel. I locked myself in my apartment, shoving furniture against the door, but the sound was inside now, in my head, my chest. I called Mia, sobbing, begging her to come. She arrived at dawn, her face pale, but when we checked the lantern room, there was nothing. No glow, no shadow, just the old lens, dusty and still. "You're stressed, Dan," she said, her voice gentle but distant. "Maybe take a break." I wanted to scream that I wasn't crazy, but the doubt in her eyes mirrored my own. I stayed away for a few days, crashing at a motel inland, but the pulse followed, faint in the hum of the air conditioner, the drip of the faucet. My anxiety spiraled, my thoughts a mess of fear and self-doubt. Was I losing it? I had always worried my mind was too fragile, my anxiety a crack that could shatter me. But this felt real, external, like something had latched onto me. I scoured the internet, finding old sailor tales about the lighthouse, stories of keepers who vanished, lights that burned without power. One forum post from someone called Coast Wraith mentioned a curse tied to the sea. A ritual gone wrong. Something about blood and sacrifice to keep the light burning. I laughed it off, desperate for it to be nonsense, but the pulse was in my dreams now, and the shadows moved when I wasn't looking. The first twist came a week later, when I went back to the lighthouse, telling myself I'd prove it was all in my head. I was checking the grounds when I found it, a rusted knife, half buried in the sand near the tower, its blade etched with strange symbols. My hands shook as I picked it up, the metal cold, almost pulsing. That night, the lens glowed again, and the shadow was back, closer, its faceless head tilting like it was studying me. But this time, it wasn't alone. Smaller shapes moved with it, their forms indistinct but familiar, like soldiers, their outlines flickering in the green light. My mind flashed to the news I'd heard that morning. A shooting at Fort Stewart, 5 soldiers injured, a sergeant in custody. The pulse surged, and the shadows whispered, not my name but a word, sacrifice. I ran, my sneakers slipping on the wet stone, my breath hitching. I didn't stop until I was in my car, speeding away, the knife still in my pocket, burning against my leg. I quit the next day, ignoring Mia's calls, moving to a city far from the coast. But the pulse followed, in every hum, every shadow. My anxiety was a living thing now, feeding on every sound, every doubt. I started researching the lighthouse, finding that book of coastal folklore in a dusty shop, its pages smelling of salt and decay. It described a ritual, a blood offering to keep the light burning, to appease something in the sea. The knife was part of it, a tool for sacrifice, and I'd taken it, breaking the cycle. The second twist came months later when I thought I'd escaped. I was unpacking in my new apartment when I found a photo in my bag. One I hadn't taken. It showed the lighthouse at night, the lens glowing green, and me, standing in the lantern room, my face blank, holding the knife. Behind me were shadows. Not just one, but dozens. Their faceless forms crowding the glass. I burned the photo, but the smell of smoke carried the pulse, and my apartment filled with whispers. I don't sleep anymore, terrified of what I'll see when I close my eyes. The knife is hidden, but I feel it pulsing in my closet, calling me back to the sea. The lighthouse is still there, the light still calling. If you're ever near St. Mary's, stay away from the coast at night. Don't look at the light. It might see you back. The universe doesn't forgive those who disturb its balance. My curiosity, my refusal to leave the knife where it lay, tied me to something I can't escape. Is it a curse, or is my mind breaking under the weight of what I saw? The pulse still hums. The shadows still move. The real horror is never knowing, forever questioning whether I'm haunted by the sea or by myself.
The playground echo. Sometimes, the ordinary moments of life hide something sinister, waiting to slip through the cracks. Have you ever wondered what lingers in the places we take for granted? Schoolyards, playgrounds, the spaces where children laugh and play? What if a single misstep, a bump, a fall, could unleash something that follows your home, whispering in the dark? A child's cry that isn't a child's, a shadow that moves when no one's there. What happens when the world you trust turns against you, and no one else can see it? Your subscriptions, likes, and notifications keep these chilling stories alive. So, settle in, turn off the lights, and let's uncover what hides in the daylight. This story came to me while I was digging through news archives for a true crime podcast, looking for cases that felt unfinished, unexplained. I found a small article about a 6-year-old boy in Birmingham who died in his sleep after a playground accident. The details were sparse. A bump on the head, a normal day, then tragedy. But the comments online were different. Marlborough Primary, saying it had a history. Strange incidents brushed off as accidents. One user, a former teacher, hinted at something darker, claiming they'd felt watched on the playground at night. I tracked them down, and after weeks of coaxing, they shared their story. This is their account in their own words, and it's haunted me ever since. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I used to be a librarian at Marlborough Primary School in Birmingham. At 32, I thought I'd seen every kind of chaos a school could offer. Spilled juice, lost books, kids sneaking into places they shouldn't. The library was my refuge, a quiet corner where I could manage my anxiety, keeping the world orderly with neatly shelved books. I've always been a nervous person, overthinking every creak in my old apartment, every shadow that seemed to linger. But the school felt safe, predictable, until the day I stayed late on the playground and saw something that broke my reality apart. It was December, a cold, gray evening, and I was covering for a teacher on playground duty after hours. The kids had gone home, but I was tidying up stray toys and checking the grounds before locking up. The playground was ordinary swings, a slide, and a climbing wall tucked against a brick barrier. But that night, it felt wrong. The air was too still. The silence heavy, like the world was holding its breath. My stomach churned, a familiar knot of anxiety, but sharper, like a warning. I told myself it was just the dark, my mind playing tricks. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I was picking up a soccer ball when I heard a faint giggle, high and childish, coming from the climbing wall. My heart skipped. The school was empty. I'd locked the gates myself. I froze, my breath catching, and called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" No answer, just the echo of my own voice. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam swept over the wall, catching nothing but chipped paint and shadows. I laughed, a nervous, shaky sound, telling myself it was the wind or my imagination. But then it came again, louder, giggled, followed by a soft thud, like something small hitting the ground. My chest tightened, my anxiety spiking. I've always had this fear of being watched, a leftover from childhood nightmares about eyes in the dark. Now, it felt real, like something was crouching just out of sight, studying me. I forced myself to walk toward the wall, my flashlight shaking, and that's when I saw it, a small dark smudge on the bricks, fresh like blood. My mind flashed to the news I'd heard that morning. A boy, Tommy, had bumped his head here during lunch, running into the wall while racing his friends. He'd been fine, they said, just a bump, sent home with an ice pack. But the smudge felt wrong, too dark, too thick, like it was seeping into the brick. I backed away, my pulse racing, and tripped over a toy truck falling hard. The giggle came again, closer, from the shadows near the slide. I scrambled up, my flashlight catching a flicker of movement, small, quick, like a child darting out of sight. My throat closed, tears pricking my eyes. I wanted to run, to lock myself in the library, but my legs wouldn't move. The air grew colder, the playground feeling smaller, like the walls were closing in. I whispered, "Tommy," though I knew it couldn't be him. He was home, safe. Wasn't he? I don't know how I made it back to the library, but I locked the door and sat at my desk, trembling, trying to rationalize it. A prank, maybe? Or my anxiety making monsters out of nothing. But when I checked my phone, I had a voicemail from the school receptionist, left an hour ago. "Sarah, it's about Tommy. He passed away last night, in his sleep. We don't know why yet." My phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. The room spun, my mind screaming that it was a coincidence, that the giggle, the smudge, the shadow wasn't connected. But deep down, I knew better. Something was here, and it had seen me. I didn't sleep that night. My apartment felt wrong, The shadows too deep, the silence too loud. I kept hearing that giggle, faint, like it was coming through the walls. My anxiety meds didn't help. They made my thoughts fuzzy, like I was sinking into a fog where the giggle could find me. I called in sick the next day, but I couldn't stay away. I needed answers. I went back to school after dark, armed with a flashlight and a cross necklace I hadn't worn since I was a kid. The playground was empty, but the air was thick, like it was pressing against my skin. I avoided the climbing wall, but my eyes kept drifting to it, to that smudge, now darker, spreading like a stain. Then I heard it again. The giggle, followed by a whisper. Sarah, my name. Soft and childish, but wrong. Like it was spoken through a mouth that wasn't human. I spun, my flashlight catching nothing but swings swaying in the windless air. My heart pounded, my mind fracturing under the weight of fear and doubt. Was I losing it? I'd always worried I was too fragile. My anxiety was a crack that could break me open. But this wasn't in my head. It was real, and it knew me. The first twist came when I found the toy truck I'd tripped over the night before. It was sitting on the library steps, though I'd left it on the playground. Scratched into its side was a single word. Run! My breath caught up. My hands shaking so badly I dropped my flashlight. The beam rolled, illuminating the climbing wall, and there in the brick was Tommy's face. Not a drawing, but a shape in the smudge, his eyes wide, his mouth open in a silent scream. I screamed, stumbling back, and the giggle filled the air, echoing from every corner of the playground. I ran, my sneakers pounding the pavement, not stopping until I was home, doors locked, lights blazing. But the giggle followed, fainting, seeping through my windows. I stopped sleeping, stopped eating. My mind was a mess of fear and questions. Was it Tommy? Something pretending to be him? I searched online, finding old stories about the school. Accidents, kids getting hurt on that same wall, teachers quitting after strange encounters. A blog post mentioned a curse, tied to the land the school was built on, something about a forgotten ritual that demanded a price. I laughed it off, desperate to believe it was nonsense. But the giggle was in my dreams now, and the shadows in my apartment moved when I wasn't looking. The second twist came weeks later when I thought I'd escape by quitting my job. I was packing to move, throwing books into boxes, when I found a child's drawing tucked inside one, a crude sketch of the playground, a climbing wall, and a figure with my face, standing alone. At the bottom in shaky crayon was written, "You saw me?" I hadn't told anyone about that night, not even my sister, who thought I was just stressed. But the drawing wasn't mine, and I lived alone. I burned it, sobbing, but the smell of smoke carried that giggle, and my apartment filled with the sound of creaking swings. Now I'm somewhere else, far from Birmingham, but the giggle follows. It's in the hum of my fridge, the drip of my faucet. Shadows move in my peripheral vision, always small, always quick. My anxiety is a living thing now, feeding on every sound, every doubt. I've started researching rituals, old books about courses, but I'm terrified to try them. What if I make it worse? What if it's not Tommy, but something older, something that's been waiting all along? I'm telling you this because I need someone to know, someone to believe me. If you're ever near a playground at night, don't listen too closely. Don't look at the shadows. They might be waiting for you. The world punishes those who linger where they shouldn't. My curiosity, my refusal to run when I first heard that giggle, tied me to something I can't escape. Is it a curse, or is my mind breaking under the weight of what I saw? The shadows still move. The giggle still calls. The real horror is the uncertainty, the question of whether I'm haunted by something out there, or something inside me.
The secret psychology of women and love. Sometimes, the people we're drawn to hold secrets that unravel our reality. Have you ever locked eyes with someone and felt your soul laid bare, as if they saw every fear, every desire you've buried? What if that gaze wasn't human, but something older, something that feeds on your deepest emotions? A touch that burns, a whisper that pulls you under, a love that feels too perfect to be real. What would you do if you realized the attraction pulling you in was a trap, luring you to a truth you can't escape? Your subscriptions, likes, and notifications keep these chilling stories alive. So dim the lights, take a deep breath, and let's fall into the shadows. This story began when I was researching obscure psychological phenomena for a podcast, diving into forums and blogs about human behavior and attraction. I stumbled across a viral video titled "The Secret Psychology of Women and Love." Stoicism, packed with strange facts about desire and intimacy. The comments were wild people sharing stories of encounters that felt too intense, too otherworldly. One user, a former long-haul trucker, mentioned a woman they met at a remote diner who seemed to know their every thought, leaving them haunted. I tracked them down, and after weeks of messages, they shared their story. This is their account, in their own words, and it's left me questioning what lies behind a stranger's gaze. My name is Ethan Caldwell, and at 34, I thought I'd seen every kind of lonely road the American Midwest had to offer. As a long-haul trucker, I lived for the quiet of the night, the hum of my rig, the endless stretch of highway under the stars. I'd always been anxious, overthinking every creak in my cab, every shadow in the dark. The road was my escape, a place where I could outrun my fears, until I stopped at the Starlight Diner off Route 36 in Missouri and met her. Her name was Lila, and she changed everything I thought I knew about desire, fear, and what it means to be human. It was late August. The air was heavy with summer heat. When I pulled into the diner's gravel lot around 2 a.m., the place was a relic. Flickering neon sign, cracked vinyl booths, the kind of spot truckers love for its cheap coffee and silence. I was alone, nursing a coffee, when I felt it, a prickling on my neck, like someone was watching me. My anxiety, always simmering, flared, but I pushed it down. I'd always had this fear of being seen, of someone knowing the parts of me I kept hidden. My doubts, my loneliness. The diner was empty except for a waitress wiping the counter, so I told myself it was nothing. Then she walked in. Lila. She was striking. Long dark hair, eyes like polished jade, a smile that felt like it was just for me. She slid into the booth across from me without asking, her gaze locking onto mine. My heart raced, not from fear, but something else, something electric. "Long night, Ethan," she said, her voice smooth, like she'd known me forever. I froze, my coffee cup trembling in my hand. I hadn't told her my name, hadn't even spoken. My anxiety screamed, but her eyes held me, pulling me in, making me feel exposed yet wanted. I mumbled something about the road, and she laughed, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine, warm and cold at once. We talked for hours, or maybe minutes. Time felt slippery with her. She seemed to know things about me, things I'd never told anyone. My fear of being alone forever, my guilt over a fight with my brother years ago. She leaned closer, her fingers brushing mine, and my skin burned, not with pain, but with hunger. I didn't understand. My mind raced, torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay forever. When she stood to leave, she whispered, "Come back tomorrow, Ethan. I'll be waiting." I watched her walk into the night, her silhouette fading into the fog, and I swear her shadow moved wrong, like it was separate from her, lingering too long. I didn't sleep that night, my cab feeling too small, the air too thick. Her voice echoed in my head, her touch still burning on my skin. I told myself it was just attraction, my lonely heart playing tricks. But my anxiety was a beast now, clawing at every thought. I called my brother Jake, the only person I trusted, and told him about Lila. He laughed, said I was smitten, but his voice was uneasy, like he sensed something I didn't. "Be careful, man," he said. "Some people aren't what they seem." I brushed it off, but the diner's neon sign haunted my dreams, pulsing like a heartbeat. The next night, I went back, drawn by a pull I couldn't explain. Lila was there, same booth, same smile, but her eyes were sharper, like they saw through me. The diner felt different, too quiet, the air heavy with a metallic tang. She leaned in, her breath warm against my cheek, and whispered about things that made my blood run cold. Memories I'd buried, fears I'd never spoken. "You're mine, Ethan," she said, her voice layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. My chest tightened, my anxiety screaming, but I couldn't look away. Her gaze was a trap, pulling me deeper, making me want her even as my gut screamed to run. I stumbled out of the diner, my head spinning, and drove until dawn, trying to shake her. But her voice followed, in the hum of my engine, the static of my radio. Shadows moved in my mirrors, not mine but hers, her silhouette flickering in the corners of my vision. I stopped sleeping, my anxiety a living thing, feeding on every sound, every glimpse of her. I started researching, scouring trucker forums for stories about Starlight Diner. I found whispers. Drivers who'd met a woman there, felt her pull, then vanished. One post, from a user, Night Wanderer, mentioned a curse, a ritual tied to the diner's land, something about a woman who wasn't human, who fed on desire, binding men to her with a gaze. The first twist came a week later, when I found a note in my cab, written in my own handwriting but not my words, "Come back, or you'll never be free." My heart stopped. I hadn't been to the diner in days, hadn't written anything. I drove to Jake's place, desperate for answers, and showed him the note. His face went pale, and he pulled out a photo from his wallet. Lila, standing with him at a bar years ago, her eyes the same jade green. "She was my girlfriend," he whispered, his voice shaking. "She died in a crash near that diner. I never told you because I couldn't." My mind fractured, my anxiety screaming that this was impossible. If she was dead, who had I met then? I went back to diner, needing it to end. The place was empty, the neon sign dark, but Lila was there, waiting. Her smile was gone, her eyes glowing faintly, like bioluminescent sea creatures. "You can't leave me, Ethan," she said, her voice a chorus of whispers. Shadows moved behind her, not one but dozens. Men with hollow eyes, their faces blank. My legs buckled, my mind screaming that she wasn't human, that she was something older, something that fed on want, on love twisted into obsession. I ran, my truck roaring to life, but the shadows followed, their whispers filling the cab, her gaze burning in my mind. The second twist came months later, when I thought I'd escaped. I was in a new city, far from Route 36, when I found a locket in my bag, silver and tarnished, engraved with LEC, my initials. Inside was a photo of me, my face blank, standing in the diner, Lila's arm around me. I hadn't taken it, hadn't been back. I burned the locket, but the smoke carried her voice, her laugh, and my apartment filled with shadows. My skin was marked now, faint lines like veins, pulsing when I closed my eyes. I drove to the diner's lot, but it was gone, razed, the ground barren, except for a single stone, glowing faintly green, whispering my name. I'm somewhere else now, but Lila's gaze follows. It's in every mirror, every stranger's glance. My anxiety is a prison, locking me in with her voice, her touch. I've stopped trusting my own mind, my own desires. Was she a ghost, a curse, or something my broken heart conjured? I'm telling you this because I need someone to believe me. If you're ever on a lonely highway, don't stop at a diner that feels too quiet. Don't meet her eyes. She's always watching, always waiting. The universe punishes those who chase what they shouldn't. My loneliness, my need for connection drew me to Lila, and now I'm hers, whether she's real or a trick in my mind. The shadows still move, her voice still calls, and the locket reappears, no matter how many times I destroy it. The real horror is never knowing. Am I cursed by her gaze, or by my own fractured soul? The road stretches on, and she's still out there, waiting for me to come back.